Anthony Weaver press conference. Yes, I get it was yesterday, but I wanted to make sure I got all the things and all that stuff. And we're going to react to this because I've heard tidbits. I've heard his talk. This is the intro, Doug. Let's jump into it. What is up, Finn fans? I started talking. I started talking too much, and it was the intro, but I'm very excited to listen to his full interview. Like I said, I've heard tidbits. I've heard his talk on Jalen Ramsey. I've heard his talk on the defensive style. I heard a lot of little tidbits, and I'm very interested to hear the whole thing. Now, am I going to play the whole thing? Am I going to react to the whole thing? No. It's like 23 minutes, and with me stopping and going, this video would be like half hour, give or take. But let's just, without me rambling too much, let's just get into it. I'm going to pop it up down here, and we're going to listen to what Anthony Weaver has to say.
On your face.
Can you introduce yourself?
Okay. Omar Kelly from Dolphins.com. I wanted to know, what do you think your experience as a former player adds to the dimension as your dimension as a defensive coach and just coach in general?
I think that's been a huge asset to me just in general throughout my coaching career. Not necessarily for the ups of what I did while I played, but more just the hardships and adversity that I face, because I can help coach guys through that so that they can persevere and ultimately, hopefully, be better than I was at those same situations. So that is probably the biggest asset for me in terms of like my playing career, just having the ability to coach guys through those adverse situations.
Daniel, if we see Miami Herald.
Nice to meet you, Dan.
I know a lot of people are wondering, you spent the past couple of years in Baltimore, you have experience in DC and Houston. But in terms of the scheme that you're planning to bring to Miami, what do you foresee that? Do you think you're maybe bound to one particular scheme, or how do you plan to approach that?
Yeah, I think the scheme that we use in Baltimore is actually extremely multiple and flexible. Mm-hmm. And the foundation of what I'm
going to be stopping the video a lot, so if you want to watch the full video, I'll link in the description. It's on the Miami Dolphins YouTube channel. If you remember, I'm going to play it, so we'll go more into what he has to say. But if you remember when I broke down what his defensive scheme might be, I talked about that he learned from Rex Ryan, he learned from Wink Martindale, and he learned from McDonald. And McDonald with the Ravens last year wasn't so blitz heavy as Wink and Rex were. He liked to give those disguises where you didn't know which level the blitzes were going to come on. Might be talking about that. I might have jumped the gun, but
we're going to do here will be from that. But the beauty in that is a lot of the things that they've already done here that they've had success in, we're very similar there. So there should be a lot of crossover
blitzing.
But I think in this league, it's hard to just pigeonhole yourself as one particular thing, because you're going to face different situations throughout the entire year, whether it's weather, injuries. There's a multitude of factors, and your scheme better be flexible enough to, one, adapt to the players and adapt to whatever situation you may be in. So,
loved hearing that. Again, I'm not going to crap on Vic Fangio a lot. I'm not going to crap on him at all. But that's a big difference. I don't know if they told him to say that. I don't know if he knows what happened, but a big difference, because if you remember, and the players said it, and a lot of people said it, that the struggles that were happening in the beginning of the season was because the Dolphins players weren't getting what Fangio was trying to install, because it was so different from what the defense was, and he wasn't ready to compromise. He wasn't ready to go in between, blitz more, understand where these guys can play, yada, yada, move players around. Jalen Ramsey said he wants to travel. X said he wanted to travel. So the fact that Weaver comes in and his second question in, he talks about the defense and how, we need to adapt. We need to change to certain environments, certain players, certain schemes, and he's going to equate to the players and make it, so they understand it. So far, so good. And we're in question number 2.
Adam Beasley, Pro Football Network. Who would you say is your greatest influence on what you believe in your fundamentals as a defensive coach?
I wonder who he's going to say.
The first one is Romeo Cornell.
Well, okay.
He's a guy that obviously was very detailed in terms of techniques and fundamentals and what he expected from the guys. But more importantly, off the field, he was extremely calm in the chaos. Right? There's a lot of ups and downs throughout the NFL season. You have some guys that ride the roller coaster. I don't believe that, right? I think when you do that, your players are going to react the same way. So I try very much to be the same guy every single day, and I really don't have to try. It's truly just who I am, right? And then just constantly making sure we're trying to get 1% better, which requires 100% effort every day. But I think as long as you're on that constant chase to get better, eventually you'll get to where you want to go. But my first is Romeo Crennel. The second one has to be John Harbaugh, right? In my short 3 years with him, I just saw how he walked and operated and constantly kept the pulse of the team. And when he got up and addressed the team, he always had something particular in mind and was very direct, right, in what he was trying to get done. And I have so much respect for how he walks and operates. It was much different than any coach I'd been around prior, and really confirmed what I was doing to myself. Because I was like, this is how I envisioned myself operating, and obviously it works, and you can have success doing it.
Anthony, David Ferronis of South Florida Sun Sentinel.
I'm surprised they didn't mention Rex, Wink, Martindale, any of those guys. But Romeo Crennel being the first guy is very interesting to me.
What is at the core of your overall philosophy as a leader, as a coach, as a teacher?
Yeah, man, I think of coaching as like service work, right? And I ascribe to the thought that if you work in service, you should never get nervous, right? And when I got into this coaching profession in 2010, in my mind I was like, all right, I'm going to get in this because this game has been so good to me, and this is my opportunity to pay it forward. So whatever has happened as a result of that has truly been in just me trying to make sure that I can be a force multiplier with whoever that is around me. So every player, every coach, anybody, whether they're in the cafeteria, right, within in communications and PR, like I want to be in service to them and make sure they get my absolute best every single day.
Anthony, Mike Cunio, CBS News Miami. How you doing? When you look at the roster on defense, what maybe unit or player maybe excites you the most about getting to coach?
Yeah, there's a guy there's probably multiple guys on every level of defense that you can get excited about, right? Up front, you got the Zach Sealers, Jalen Phillips, right? Bradley Chubb, Christian Wilkins, right? Gotta love watching him. David Long at the linebacker position. Javon Holland, who's an absolute beast and playmaker out there running around, and Jalen Ramsey, right? So on every level of defense, there's somebody that you get excited about watching. And I know there's guys I failed to mention. I apologize to all of them. But the opportunity to come here, obviously, with a team that's had the success they had, how do you pass on that, right? Mike and that offense, they're going to put up points, right? That's definitely going to happen. And it's our job to make sure that we give up less points to the other team. And we plan on doing that every time we get out there.
Now, let me put my tinfoil hat on. Let me go into a little bit conspiracy theorist, little stir the pot a little bit here. He didn't mention Jerome Baker and he didn't mention Xavier Howard. Now, he was mentioning the different levels of the defense, right? He did mention Christian Wilkins, and I can tell you that the Dolphins have been working with Christian Wilkins even last offseason. If you guys remember, they couldn't come to an agreement, and then they both agreed during the season they won't talk about it. He did David Long, he mentioned Javon Holland, Chubb, Phillips. He didn't mention Andrew Van Ginkel. Now, again, might be because, he's not necessarily a starter, all that stuff, but there are 3 guys he didn't mention. AVG is a free agent, but so is Christian Wilkins. He didn't mention Jerome Baker, and he didn't mention Xavier Howard. Interesting. Now, again, like you said, he apologizes if he missed anyone, yada, yada, but it's a little interesting.
Anthony Allen Poupar with AllDolphins.com.
Goodbye!
What was the biggest lesson you took from your first stint as DC with Houston in 2020?
Yeah. One, try not to take a job when there's going to be a worldwide pandemic. All right, first. 2, like problems are gifts. Like with all the adversity that we dealt with throughout that season, although we didn't get the results on the field we wanted, I felt like that unit as a whole always stayed together and fought their butts off till the bitter end. So I take a tremendous amount of pride in that. Now, what did I learn? I learned 1, problems are gifts. 2, you better be multiple enough in your scheme, like I talked about earlier, to handle whatever situation arises. Whether that's injury, COVID, whatever that may be, you better make sure that you have answers schematically.
A lot of people get on him when they look, because he's now a defensive coordinator. Last time he was a defensive coordinator was with the Houston Texans. And a lot of people look at that and say, that's what you're getting, Miami. You're getting that. Not necessarily because, one, coaches grow, they evolve, they hopefully get better. We see it with Spagnuolo, where a horrible head coach just re-signed with the Chiefs, fantastic defensive coordinator. He had J.J. Watt, and that's it. Like, it was a completely different atmosphere. The whole Deshaun Watson, all that stuff, completely different atmosphere. I'm giving him a clean slate.
You mentioned Christian Wilkins. It was one of the conditions. I'm only taking the job of Christian Wilkins.
I love coaching good players, and obviously he is one of them. So have a tremendous amount of respect for him. Know that he's positioned himself, obviously, for a huge payday. And as an ex-player, I completely understand the business of the league. So love Christian, right? Would love to have him. But, man, we'll see.
You've now played in a different era, and you're coaching in this unique era.
Yeah.
How would you compare this era of players to what you played in?
Well, they make a lot more money with the NIL, first and foremost. You may not see me if I made that NIL money back then. But I think
wrong.
Overall, the players are the same, right? You hear guys saying like, this decade players or whatever, they're soft, all this stuff with social media. The players are the same. They want to be coached hard, and they want to be loved up, right? And that's what I believe in. I believe coach them hard and love them up, man. And usually when you do that, they tend to respond for you.
I disagree, Anthony. Respectfully, I disagree. He played in the same era-ish with the same kind of rules and stuff, but you can't say the players were always the same. Because you look back at the 90s, you look back at the 80s, heck, you look back at the 70s when they're smoking cigarettes on the sideline. That's an extreme. I understand that's an extreme. But you can't always say they're the same. They're faster now. Like, you take the best team from 2000 and you play them against the best team this year, much faster. More physical in 2000, much faster now. It seems like that's kind of the thing now. I could be wrong. Comment if I'm wrong.
Coach Travis Winkler for the Miami Dolphins here.
Travis.
Problems are gifts.
Yeah.
As an adage of yours, have you heard of adversity as an opportunity yet around the building?
I have
my
not
God.
heard that one yet.
Those sound very similar.
Now, most of the coaches have been off, so.
So my question is, because Coach talked about the person starting with you first, I'm curious about your experience on that side of coming in here and meeting McDaniel and the staff. And
He
just
needs to
your
get a
experience
new
with getting to know the guys.
slogan for this
Yeah,
year.
so I've known Mike since 2006.
Okay.
He was a QC in Houston when I played there. And
Oh,
who you
okay.
guys see on a week-to-week basis is who he has always been. I had a tremendous amount of respect when I played not under him directly, but I just saw his work ethic as a veteran player at that particular point. And then when I had the opportunity to coach with him in Cleveland, I was
2014.
like, oh, he's special. It took the rest of the world a little bit longer to see that than I did. Some other head coaches along the way, I tried to get them to hire Mike, wouldn't listen, and hey, to their detriment, right? But from a coaching standpoint, philosophically, we believe in the same things. We believe it. I'm going to go back. So, do you guys remember Clarence Brooks? All right, Clarence Brooks, he coached here defensive line back early 2000s, something like that. He's since
his
passed,
history?
right? Rest in peace. But Clarence used to say, this game has been and always will be about the players. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And as an ex-player, I know how finite this career is. And because of that, I take my responsibility in a leadership position as a defensive coordinator extremely, extremely important. And I don't want to waste anybody's very finite time in this league. So because of that, man, like, we want to be great in all that we do.
He has not coached a down of meaningful week 1 to week 18 football, and he's already selling me. Now, I am being cautiously optimistic. I'd rather be surprised than let down, but it's a big difference. I like that he's a player first type of person and not, he said, you be hard, but then, you still got their back. I love that mentality, but I like that he's for the players, because if you can't get them, it's a different world now, right? And we saw it with Fangio. We saw it with some other coaches that if you can't get the players to buy in to your scheme and to your coaching style. And if you lose the locker room, you're going to lose, and then you're going to lose your job. And it's, like I said, it's a different time. So you kind of want, it's like what Mike McDaniel said, right? I want to prove to them that if they listen to me, they'll be successful. Tyreek Hill successful, Jalen Waddle successful, Tua passing leader, Raheem Mostert, most rushing touchdowns. Like, listen and trust me, and I'll take you to the promised land. And it seems like Anthony Weaver is the same, but on the opposite side of the ball. And I like what he's saying.
What is your overall philosophy at this present day on the blitz? How often to use it, when to use it?
Yeah, I mean, blitzing is truly like, it's got to be calculated and not reckless. I've been around both guys, right? I've been around guys that just call it
Rex,
and let's see what happens. Let's throw flies in the windshield and see what sticks. All right, and then I've been guys that have been more calculating that, and I believe you have to be calculating, not reckless, in blitzing, because when you do blitz, you're obviously leaving your under coverage and secondary vulnerable. So whenever we do blitz, it'll be with intent.
That's what you want to hear, right? We heard Fangio, and again, I'm not here to poop on Fangio, but you heard Fangio say, I'll blitz when I want to, not when I need to, which, yes, but we kind of all, as Dolphin fans, wished he wanted to more. But what Weaver's saying here makes, a lot of times if you blitz and you don't get through, you leave your guys open on the back end. And we've seen that. Now, hopefully he changes things up and he pressures more and he has some of the best corners. Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard, I talked about this, one of the best corners in the NFL at, playing press coverage. They did it about 4% last year, whereas the Ravens did it about 23%. Big difference. But I want to add something that I didn't say a few seconds ago. He's a player. He's an ex-player. He knows how to talk to these guys. He knows how the locker room works. He's been an ex-player not too long ago. That's another big part that I like about him.
How important is it for you to get those memories for the players that you're going to be in charge of?
It's everything. Ultimately, you get paid a king's ransom to play this game. And I think everybody involved in this business knows that. But I've never seen like a U-Haul behind a hearse, right? So at the end of the day, we're not dying with our money, all right? But when we're sitting there, hopefully you have some incredible memories to look back on and cherish. And that's what I'd love to create here with Mike and the team.
Some other assistants have been hired on defense. Can you tell us what you like about each, whether it's Joe Barry, Ryan Crow, Brian Duker?
This is going to be interesting.
Joe Barry, obviously, is a tremendous football coach, right? Mm-hmm. Most recently, the defensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers. Back in 21, when I left Houston, me and Joe spent a lot of time conversating about the potential of joining up with the Chargers under Brandon Staley. That didn't come to fruition, but through those conversations, we formed a friendship. And over the years, we've always kind of kept in touch. And then through mutual friends, I've obviously heard just nothing but incredible things about him. So to add him to our staff with his wisdom and intellect and knowledge is a tremendous win for us as a team, and then for me individually, right? As a guy that's but if you watched his hand when he put it on his chest, you saw kind of how his fingers were all a little janked up. You could tell he played defensive line. That's just been in it most recently.
See that finger? See how his two fingers
Ryan
kind of.
Duker, who we just hired as pass game coordinator, we worked together in Cleveland.
See the middle finger?
2014 and 15, and then he has familiarity with the scheme that we want to run because he was with Wink Martindale in Baltimore for a number of years as well.
Okay.
So, and I think he's just tremendous football mind, young kind of up and coming coach, has great ideas, and obviously you see his team with Detroit. They just lost an NFC Championship game, right? So, does a tremendous job there. I think it was a huge opportunity to get him. Ryan Crow, right? Ryan Crow. You look at Tennessee's outside backers, okay? Harold Landry. I can't even remember who else is out there, but all they did was produce and get after the quarterbacks and sent dominant edges, which is exactly what we want to do here, all right, at the outside backer position. But to that being said, I do think Ryan Slowick did an awesome job doing that a year ago with the outside backers. I view Ryan as a tremendous asset because he's coached on every level of the defense. So when you have that guy, I mean, and one, he's incredibly selfless, right? So he's actually going to help us in the secondary as well. And really look forward to working with Ryan and trust his just football acumen in general. And then the last guy I think we added so far is Deshaun Sheed. who played corner, all right, played behind Richard Sherman in Seattle, all right, won a championship, has since been in coaching, and shoot, I mean, you look at Seattle and what they've done there, particularly at the DB position. I mean, there's a lot of good ones. And I feel like when you talk to him, you can just feel the impact that he's had on them. So he's a younger guy, he's got all the energy, and he can relate. You talk about like ex-players being able to relate to current players and being out there talking from a vantage point of, I've done this, here's how you can help yourself, right? He obviously provides that too. So excited about everybody, man. And most importantly, to me, they're all incredible football minds, but more importantly, they're good people, right? And when you're in the midst of a season, right? The season is long and arduous for a reason, right? You gotta be tenacious because it exposes the frauds. And when you get to week 13, 14, 15, 16, you better have guys you want to be in the foxhole with. And I believe everyone on this staff and everyone we've hired to this point are those guys.
You mentioned
First, I think it's really cool he kept Ryan Slowick. Obviously, we lost Anthony Campanile to the Packers, and then we lost Joe Casper to the Eagles. He was our safety coach, so it kind of seems like Ryan Slowick might be the safety coach, but a secondary coach. I think it's interesting he brought up how long the season is, and then he brought up the word frauds, because that's what the Dolphins were kind of labeled, because we beat one winning team last year. Very interesting. And I like the way, I didn't know he worked with so many people. So, and I like that the last guy he was talking about was part of the Legion of Boom with Seattle. So he's bringing in, again, another young guy who played recently. And like you said, well, just like him, he can relate to these players.
Ryan Slowick, is he staying on, and do you know in what role again?
Yeah, he's certainly staying on. He is a very valued asset for us. He is going to be helping us in the secondary. What his exact title is, I'll let Mike talk to you about that. We're still working through it, but love Ryan, man, and the conversations I've had with him so far, he is juiced about it. He's excited.
Are you an upstairs or downstairs type guy?
I'm a downstairs guy, man.
I love that. I love that.
I need to feel right what's going on in the game, feel how the players are reacting to the situation, and hopefully be a positive influence in whatever reaction that is. So I don't think you can have that same effect from up in the booth.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I get the vantage point of being up in the booth because you can see everything. So you can kind of see the formations and stuff, and you can kind of see, okay, well, this is what we need to do. But like you said, when you're down on the field, it's just different. And you can talk to the players more in person. You can huddle them up. Listen, we're about to go out there. They gave us the lead. We need to keep this lead. There's so many time left, yada, yada. I need you, versus like, calling them on the phone and being like, listen, I need you to fucking back up. So it's like, I like it. I like it much better.
What do you envision you can do with a guy like Jalen Ramsey?
I mean, it's Jalen Ramsey. I mean, come on now. Like, you talk about prototype corners. He is that, right? Size, length, speed, competitiveness. The thing about him is I think he's your ultimate chess piece. So to have him just sit outside and, you know, be a field corner or boundary corner or something like that, I think is a detriment to him. We got to find ways to move him around where he can be most impactful. And we're committed to doing that.
How do you, again, he hasn't done anything. He hasn't even met with the players yet. He hasn't done anything. Nothing. How can you not listen to this guy and be like, okay. Now, again, cautiously optimistic, but still like, okay. Like that was the biggest knock on Vic Fangio, was that he just took Ramsey and you're staying here. You're not going to travel, even though when he traveled against the Jets, we shut down their receiver in Garrett Wilson. You're staying here on the right side. You're not moving, yada, yada. Whereas he's coming in, he's saying he's your ultimate chess piece. See, I'm moving around. You know, another guy he's going to move around? Go look at the way they used Hamilton last year. Javon Holland is going to be all over that defense. You're going to see this style of defense is all about confusing the offense. It's got to temper it, Doug.
I want to ask you a little bit about the Ravens' mentality process. I've always admired how they play, just a physical, in your face, and I know that comes a lot from Harbaugh. But how do you build that brand of defense?
Yeah, I
Good
think
question, Omar.
the one thing about that place, right, and it probably started a long time ago with Ray Lewis and that squad.
Suggs and
And
all
every
them.
single person that's stepped in that building since tries to live up to that standard. So that probably has a lot to do with it. From a scouting standpoint, and ultimately, I think it's the same thing here. You want to make sure you get guys that have high football character, right? And I believe for the most part we have that here. When you watch the film, these guys play hard, right? Snap and I mean, I saw Bradley Chubb run down against Denver 30 yards down the field and force a fumble. Big guys don't do that. So the effort level, the want to is here. I think taking that next step to being recognized as how the Ravens play is just doing it for the long term, okay? But I think the foundational pieces you want to in terms of just internal, just grit and grind, our guys have that. Our guys have that. We just need to make sure we're doing it down in and down out for multiple seasons.
Yeah, if you watch the Dolphins defense, how many times do we see Christian Wilkins running back down, upfield, downfield, wherever you want to say, and making a tackle 15 yards downfield? And you got Jalen Phillips did it for most of his career. You go rush the passer, then you go make a tackle. Now, we saw Chubb do it, but we also saw Chubb let his emotions get the best of him and kind of hurt us. So, it's going to be interesting.
You mentioned Phillips and Chubb. Have you been able to interact with them since you've gotten the job, and how are they doing in their rehab?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about medical situations or anything like that. I'm not a doctor. I have spoken to both of them. Obviously, extremely excited to be around them. They're tremendous players and coaches. I mean, tremendous players and better people. And I tell you what, I saw Jalen Phillips the other day, and he had his shirt off, and I almost went and put a sweater on because dude is he is chiseled, right? Oh my goodness. But man, just super excited. They have just great personalities. They're people you want to be around. You could tell they're going to make everybody around them better by just being out there.
This could be a little bit vague here. What's your approach or philosophy on player development?
Yeah, I think you need to be grounded in your technique and fundamentals. It starts there. So every coach that's on staff certainly believes in that, and the guys that have been here, you see that with their guys on tape. Once you're sound there, that allows you to unleash whatever God-given ability you have. Without it, sometimes you can just be flailing around a little bit. I call it it's the story of the prodigal son, right? He leaves, things get awry, comes back home, and your dad's just sitting there with open arms. Your technique and fundamentals are the same way. If you go awry from it, things can get crazy. All right, come back to your technique and fundamentals. It'll be sitting there in open arms, and things will get right.
And we saw technique and fundamentals kind of go out the window once Eli Apple went in there and Duke Riley went in there, and kind of it got a little messy. But I'm just excited to see what he can do on the field. I'm excited to see what he can do with these players. Now he's talking the talk. It's now about walking the walk. He's saying the things we want to hear. He's saying the things we need to hear. Let's see it. Now we need to see it. Now, it's the same thing like I said about Fangio. It's not going to happen week 1. And if it does happen week 1, fantastic. Keep it going for 17 weeks. But it's going to be very interesting. But so far, I told you guys when Anthony Weaver popped up, he was one of my top candidates. We got him. I was happy. And I'm even more happy listening to him. But it's got to translate. It's got to translate on the field. Now the part of his job is obviously picking the players that fit his defense, seeing who stays, seeing who goes, and then installing it in OTAs and all that stuff. So it's going to be interesting. But comment below. Let me know what you think about what Anthony Weaver had to say. If you want to watch the full thing, because I did cut some stuff out, link is in the description, or you can go to the Dolphins YouTube channel. But I will see you guys. I got some videos planned, but I might take the weekend to breathe. But knowing me, I start to get itchy and I need to make content for you guys because I have a lot I want to talk about. So I'll just see you in the next one. But like usual, stay classy and fins up.